Good afternoon, and welcome to H3 TV, where every week we meet you and we talk about how do we navigate disruption. Well, how do we not only navigate it, how do we stay hopeful, healthy, and happy? I'm so glad you're here with me. Every week we come to you with ideas, information, and strategies about how to navigate disruption and not let those disruptions in life define us. So, thank you for being here. If you have any questions or comments throughout, please feel free to ask them in the chat and we will respond. Today, I have a special guest, my friend Nicole. Hey, Nicole, welcome to the stage.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about you, Nicole. Who are you? Where do you live? What do you do? All the good things.
I just finished building. I feel like manifesting. I don't like that word manifest, but I feel like I manifested like my dream home, which I just moved into on Lake Minnetonka in Minnesota. So people are familiar with Prince. They've generally heard of it.
Yes.
And I'm single parent, 2 kids. I've been a single mom since she was 6 months old and he was 2. They are now 15 and 17. She turned 16 in a couple of months. So I'm in the hold on years of teenagers where they're driving. Grew up in Minnesota, never planned on staying here. I'm a former figure skater. I actually am a certified figure skating coach, just specifically to help my daughter with out of state competitions or competitions that are farther away, because she also is a figure skater. And went to school for international business and marketing and never planned on being a financial advisor. I left Morgan Stanley 22 years ago to start my own business. So Prosper Well Financial, I own the commercial building. That's where I am here in Minnesota. We've got 10 people here and we manage money mainly for individuals, but we do also help corporations with selling their companies, benefits, 401k plans, private equity, all of investment banking, all of that stuff. But it's IRAs, it's stocks, it's bonds, it's mutual funds, it's all of those fun things. And then I am a survivor of domestic violence. And so when the kids were little, they were about 2 and 3, and I got them to bed one night and I was like, okay, everyone thinks my life is perfect from the outside. Because I did a radio show for 5 years on a station that was in Minnesota and Wisconsin. I had written a couple of books. I was living near Lake Minnetonka. We had boats, 4-wheelers, multiple cars, like all of this stuff. But not a single thing had I picked out. And even to the point of my career, I had wanted to go to law school. I wanted to be like Madeleine Albright or Ruth Bader Ginsburg and like change the world. And it is cool. Like, I feel like I'm changing the world. It's just in a different standpoint. It's helping people, travel and be happy and live life to the fullest and find, I hate the word balance, but find that balance in their life with money and everything. And, but I got the kids to bed one night and I'm like, okay, how did I get here? Like, I am literally miserable. And not a single thing in my life had I picked out, from my house to the car to all of this stuff. And none of it made me happy. And I was blessed to have a figure skating coach who had her PhD in psychology, and she worked with me with the power of your mind. And so I always had lists of things, and I'm like, I'm going to rewrite my bucket list. So I wrote down 12 things, and I just said, I'm going to do one thing a month for a year. Well, when you tell people you're doing something on your bucket list, they think you're dying. And I just then started calling it the Live It list. Well, now fast forward, I am headed to Egypt November 1st with 9 other people to experience life. We have a women's empowerment retreat on October 9th. And I have the Live It List Foundation. We have a Live It List Facebook group. Like, I'm doing more motivational speaker. We have these Live It List journals. Like, it's just, I really believe out of the worst things in life, out of these disruptors, can sometimes come the best, and that happened for me. And it's all about, that's what I do, is help other people be happy in life.
Yes. So you do lots of things. Lots of things. And usually I always say, when you're interviewing an entrepreneur, you never say, what do you do? You say, how many things do you do? Because we're creative, we're innovative, and we're always adding to the list, to our list of what we can do and to live fully. So whenever I interview someone, I always like to say, we all have faced many disruptions, but can you think of one that you'd be comfortable sharing, either professional or personal? You've shared a bit already, but just one time in your life, one season of disruption that you faced.
Yeah, it was August 4th of 2010. It was the defining moment. It was the first time that the 911 phone call actually went through. And I really had to, my daughter was 6 months old and I had her in one arm and my son was 2 and I had him in the other arm. And there had been times that I tried to call 911, but the phone would be taken away from me. And you know, I ran down the hallway and I had both kids in the arms and he's coming at me with a knife and like I'm like, don't hurt them, you know. And it was this moment of like, one, oh my God, I am a victim of domestic violence and I need to do something. And 2, did I really just say those words? And then 3, what the heck? And
Yeah.
how am I going to fix my life and how am I going to get out of here? And so that was really the huge defining moment for me to really have that acknowledgement of like, and I was embarrassed for a while. Like I never really talked about that I was involved in. I mean, I hid everything from everyone. And that's where like, there's a phenomenal organization called Maria's Voice, which their whole focus, like we now generally know what to look for when someone's going to have a heart attack or like a stroke or things like that. And like sex trafficking, we're starting to like hear more about those things. And so now their whole focus is like, how can you learn or how can you be more aware if someone is in a abusive or a domestic violence situation? And so for me, I had to acknowledge that. And I had to not be embarrassed by it and really use it as a turning point to be a positive thing, not a
And I
negative.
think, Nicole, we live in a world of judgment and myths, and we have you don't look like someone who would be domestic violence. You're confident enough, you're pretty enough, you're wealthy enough. I think all those stereotypes, all those there's so much domestic violence. I just cannot even wrap my brain around. I meet young girls that have been in junior high, high school,
Right.
beautiful families that you see living down the street that look happy, like you said, you look like. So before we go any further, what I want to ask you is there a myth buster? Is there a image? And that's why also there's so much shame around is like, well, you look like you have it together. You can't have it. You're exaggerating, right?
Right.
So what is something to bring awareness to our listeners, to pay attention to their friends, to pay attention to their neighbors, to ask the right questions, anything like that you could help us with?
Yep. I mean, one of the questions when you go to the doctor, they ask, like, do you feel safe in your home? You know, I mean, you can come out and be very blunt and ask that because, and it's not that someone is going to respond and say, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
But when you hear that, it's repetition. And that's where if enough of your friends or enough of your family can come around and kind of give you that little snap of like, you know, this isn't really healthy. And so for me, you know, if now I look for, now that I'm on the other side, like if someone's always rescheduling on me or like not available or like they used to travel and they used to like, you know, do pickleball or always walk or they had like a full life and they're kind of losing themselves, like becoming less social or, and people go through different experiences. It doesn't necessarily have to be domestic violence, but like in my case, like I could never go out with friends. Like, and over time, friends afterwards were like, oh God, like now that makes sense. Like why you kept canceling on us or something would happen. And for me, like it's you, when you think of domestic violence, or at least when I thought of it, I thought it was like black and blue on their face or their arms or something like that. And for me, like I was always punched in my right upper back shoulder. So like no one ever saw that stuff or like it was, and really in my opinion the emotional stuff is the worst. So if you can encourage your friends to journal, to have a therapist, and to really start asking them questions like, is there anything I can help you with?
Yeah.
And it's that non-threatening way of like, you know, I'm noticing like you keep canceling on me, like are you okay, like are you okay? Because we live, it's so interesting. I was flying, I flew the same day down to speak at an event. So I flew down and flew back. I did take a suitcase and I was flying where like, you know, I needed a sweater, but I wasn't sure like with weather and all of that stuff. So I had like an extra set of clothes with, and then like my clothes to speak and heels and tennis shoes that I was like comfortable in the airport, you know, when you're leaving, and you can understand this. Well, I was in Minneapolis. I hadn't left yet. And I walked into the Delta Sky Club bathroom. And there's this woman there with this baby. And there was like, the baby got sick, like literally like everywhere, like in her hair, like on her, like she's trying to change his little diaper. And like, he was maybe, I don't know, 1.5, 2. Like he's like walking around and you could just tell like she was struggling. And so, and she kept apologizing. Like I walked in and saw her. I was like, "Oh, can I help you with anything?" She's like, "Nope." So I go in and I'm changing my clothes and I'm coming back out and washing my hands and she's like, she kept apologizing to like every woman, like, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." And a couple women were like, "Hey, we've been there."
Yeah.
We've experienced stuff like that before. And I was like, you sure I can't help you? Like, do you need anything? And I'm like, I have a sweater. Nope, I'm okay. I'm okay. And I walked off and I got to the gate and I was getting on the plane. I already was boarding and I had this moment of regret. Like if I would have opened up my suitcase and pulled out the sweater and gave it to her, she would have taken it. And so that's where it's like, you can ask those questions like, "Are you okay?" And you don't need to be, "Are you okay? You're sure you're okay?" Like mean about it. But like, don't hesitate to dig a little bit deeper or hand someone that sweater, hand someone that, olive branch so that you're really helping them.
And also what you said, Nicole, was planting a seed, right? Like sometimes you have to be asked a lot because a lot of times in domestic violence, you're told you don't even have it that bad. You're the problem. If you didn't do this, I wouldn't do that. I think the psychological and emotional abuse is so much bigger and broader. And I do think people have that image, well, you didn't have a black eye or you don't have any broken bones. And it's like, well, wait a minute. There's a lot of ways people are controlled or abused and not always visible. And even to the victim, they don't even know because they've been told so much this is not. So anyway, I don't want to go too far down on that. What I want to talk about, so you have an exact date. I mean, that's pretty powerful. I guess I do with the hurricane hitting, but on that day, you got through to 911. Did you leave him? Did he get taken away? What happened on that day?
Yep, he left. And so they put a warrant out for his arrest. And so I called, and this is the thing. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst. And so I was volunteering like at every women's organization and all of these domestic abuse shelters. And I was teaching classes and like small groups. I was facilitating about money to help women. And it's like, so I called and I'm like, "Hey, it's Nicole Mindorf." And they're like, "Oh yeah, we have you down to volunteer next week." I'm like, no. Like, I'm calling because I just got your phone number from the police officer. And they're like, "Oh, do you need a place to stay?" And again, nope, I'm okay. And I went to my mom and dad's and they're like, "Well, is he going to show up? Does he know like where your mom and dad live?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he knows where they live. Like he actually like stayed there for some time." And I'm like, "No, I'm okay. He's not going to come there." He did. And so like then multiple cities were looking for him and they found him, they arrested him, and then he went to jail, the next day. But so for me, it was looking back, it was not accepting help from someone else and really having that embarrassment or that acknowledgement of like, here's my situation and I need help and it's okay to ask for help.
That's right. And sometimes we're teaching what we need to learn, right? Maybe you were there for a reason to get you just a little more comfortable with recognizing you weren't alone, and that having money control is a huge thing, right? A lot of people don't leave because they're like, "Well, I don't have access to the money, or I don't have any savings, or I'm not allowed to do whatever." So that's great. So when he went to jail and when you became a single mom, plus this is the father of your kids, correct?
Yes.
So that's kind of a lifelong relationship, no matter who he is and what is. You have two beautiful children with him, which adds another layer of complicated. How did you stay optimistic and hopeful and not go back and not allow fear of how do I do this alone, or what about my kids, or all the stories? How did you stay hopeful? What were some things that you did?
Right. For me, it was journaling. Like I am a huge writer. And and when things got really, really bad, he would read when we were together, he would read my journals. And so I started putting little check marks on it of how many times he told me to kill myself, or like, how many times he hit me or stuff like that. And so I would go back and look at those journals because specifically like domestic violence, one of the things that there's a term called crazy making. And you're like, okay, was it really not that bad? And this was actually the conversation I was having with my daughter the other day, now that she's a teenager. And how do we have healthy relationships? And like, we think something's really bad. And then as time passes, like, was it, we start rationalizing things. But for me, it was talking. So reading books, getting some really good therapists. And that's part of the reason why my foundation and we're doing this women's empowerment retreat is because it took me so long to find the things that worked for me.
Yeah.
So I wish I would have learned about somatic exercises earlier. I did not realize like how physically tense I had become and like how my fight or flight response, I was always in fight or always in flight. And it's interesting because I do somatic exercises every night now. And I've been doing it probably for like the last 2 years. And that's actually part of the reason, like I lost 38 pounds. Wow. And all I did was like focus on getting more sleep and drinking more water and walking 15,000 steps a day and doing somatic exercises to like calm myself and deal with the trauma. And so, I got a therapist, but it took me forever to like learn about alternative resolution therapy and like some of these deep PTSD therapies that dramatically were faster and helped me, let alone somatic exercises like were a game changer. The writing and the journaling and, looking at what am I grateful for, but then also for me, like physical movement, like I can have, and this is part of the reason why I built my house on Lake Minnetonka, like I have to be outside and I also need to be by water. Like I can have the most stressful day. And if I go home and I just like look out at the water or I get on the trail or I get on the paddle board or the kayak or whatever, like whoosh, like I just instantly feel like the stress come off of me. So, and all of us are different. Like we've got to find the thing that works for you, but movement, writing, and talking were the key things for me.
The keys and having therapy. Somatic, you're reminding me, I've not really been very good about it, but since Ian, I was talking to someone at the National Speaker Association, they're like, do you do somatic yoga? And I was like, no, I'm not familiar with it, but they were like, it's so healing after you've been through a trauma or years of trauma or whatever the case may be. So, so you shared a little bit about hope as journaling and a therapist, and then you started to share some things on health. I always like to kind of separate that just so people can listen and break down. Okay, I'm feeling hopeless. Where do I start? Okay, now I'm feeling a little more hopeful. And so you talked about, which I'm 100% with you, Nicole, is why we moved to Florida. Show me some water and get me outside, and it just calms you down. I say when I fly into Minnesota or into Florida and I see the palm trees, I swear my blood pressure drops. I go for a walk on the beach with no headphones and listen to the waves, and it's a calming and being in tune with your body. It sounds like you've really woken up to what works for me and what do I need. So what are some of your strategies you do today? You said you just lost 38 pounds. That's amazing. Especially when you do it in a nice, slow, healthy way. Like it doesn't have to be a magic pill, like just be disciplined. So what are some health habits that you take to protect yourself and not be, as a single mom, maybe dating, how do you stay healthy and avoid a toxic relationship? What are red flags that you look for staying healthy too?
Yep. So I cut out sugar and alcohol, started walking 15,000 steps a day. Well, I first started with 10,000. Now it's 15,000 steps a day. I do somatic exercises, and then I really focus on like sleeping. That is the most difficult thing for me because I have a daughter that figure skates before school and after school, and like it's just super, it's super hard. But those were the things from a health standpoint. Healthy relationships. And that's where, ironically, tomorrow will be the 1-year anniversary that I've been dating like the perfect man for me for the last year. And I look back on my life and I'm like, oh my God, things were so awful for so long. And like, now it's like, okay, like I had this dream forever and just like worked this plan to like build this dream house and like, okay. So September 13th, of 2003, I sat down in my other house and I lit candles and I sat in the right corner of my house because that's like your romance corner, I guess. Okay. And I wrote down, I just got a card and I wrote down everything that I wanted in a guy. And I sealed it. I put it in a car. I sealed it. And I put it in this envelope that said to only be opened by Nicole Middendorf. And I put it underneath in between the cushion. Well, I then decided and, found this lot, started building my home, and was selling the furniture in my old home. And those 2 chairs came to my office building. They're upstairs in the reception. And I was like, I was at my house. I'm like, oh my God, the card is in there.
Oh, wow.
So I went and grabbed it. And what's interesting is like the guy that I'm dating is like everything on that card, except for we joke because the first one is 6 feet and he's not 6 feet. He's 5'10", but like it does say taller than me. He is taller than me. But, nice, kind, from a great family, cares about his health, all of those types of things. And so I really believe it's figuring out first, like, what do you want, setting that intention, and then telling people what you're looking for and really trusting your gut and trusting your inside. And so for me, I'm so grateful because one, like what I wrote down on that sheet, what I wanted was someone that would communicate with me about money, would be free of anger. And so these are the things that for me, I believe are a healthy relationship. Like him and I, we've never had an argument. Like we've never fought. I also, and my daughter and my kids and like our friends, like joke about this now that we've been dating for a year. Everyone's like, oh, when you guys gonna get married? I'm like, why is there society pressure on like getting married? I think this is ridiculous. And so he responds, he's like, well, her crazy comes out in year 3 and so does mine. So I have to wait for that. My philosophy is the first year that you're dating someone, it's usually like rainbows and roses, right? The second year is where you really dig deep and like learn more about that person. The third year is where sometimes the crazy comes out, or you're like, can I deal with, like if they leave the toilet seat up all the time, is that like you're crazy that you can handle? Yeah. But we're actually headed, the top financial advisors, we're headed to Wisconsin. So we've got a 5-hour car ride ahead. And we have this book of questions, kind of like I came up with these money conversation cards. There's a book, there's tons of them on Amazon. And so we have this book and it's a couple's journal. And so we go on road trips and we ask these questions. And so we've talked about things that some people don't ever talk about. And I think that's what's the most important thing is, especially this happens once you have kids. Life is busy, right? And you have work, you have your friends, you have your family, and then you have your significant other, and those conversations tend to go by the wayside, or you're having more conversations about scheduling and where are the kids and what's going on versus like, who are you and who are you with and what is important and what are the values of both of you and what are your goals and how can you help the other person be the best version of themselves?
Yeah, I like that a lot. And also you did it with intention. I always say to people when they are looking to date, first heal yourself and do your work because you're going to attract about where you are in your life. And also to recognize, I think, and maybe this comes with wisdom or age, is that the most important thing isn't the physical. I'm not saying you need to be attracted to each other, but it's not the physical characteristics as much as it is what kind of heart do they have? How do they communicate? Where are they emotionally? Are they a continued learning person? Do they like education, personal and professional development? So I love that you were really intentional about it and that it's unfolding how you imagined. And I think that's a great technique to teach our listeners. How about happiness and humor especially when your marriage was ending and you were kind of getting used to what does it mean to be a single mom?
I had none. I was absolutely not happy and I was absolutely not humorous. Like I look at, so many times people talk about they're like, we just had a photo shoot the other day. And so my kids, of course, teenagers are so blunt and so honest. And so we're having pictures and my son is like, oh my God, I can't believe my mom is smiling. So I was smiling then with the photographer and not like, big open mouth smiling. I was like, smiling like without seeing my teeth. And she's like, actually, your mom looks bad. Like that is what her feature is like her happiness and like her smile. And so I didn't like looking back now, I'm like, gosh, like how were people around me in 2010 and 11 and 12? Because that's when I was healing and I was like figuring out myself and like, who am I? And like looking back, I was like, not happy. And that's where I had to really like dig deep. And that's part of the reason we have these limitless journals and there we have these vision boards. Like I needed to like vision this life of like, okay, I'm not where I want to be. And what does it look like? Like, what do I want? It felt like I was kind of like a kid again. Like I really had lost myself as a person and I needed to find myself. I needed to find that humor. I needed to find that happiness. And it's interesting. I was talking to one of our tenants in the building today, and she's like, "How are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm great." I'm like, "It's super funny because it's like I just had this really traumatic experience happen last week." And I said, I asked myself before, what? Okay, so I helped my daughter buy a VW convertible Bug, right?
Okay.
I don't know how to drive a stick shift.
Oh.
So Corey was teaching me how to drive. My daughter, what happens now with these younger generations? They go to YouTube, they watch all this stuff, right? Me, I just sit in the car and I'm like, I have no idea what a clutch is or like any of this stuff. So I had 2 lessons per se with Corey, and I had to go pick up my daughter. And he's like, you could do it. Like, he's like, you could do it. And this is one of the things that's really healthy in a relationship is like, there were so many things that I shut down because they were not good at like learning how to drive a boat. Like all of these things I did on my own because they were not good experiences in my relationship. And so now it's the opposite. And he's like, I have confidence in you. He's like, you can totally go pick her up. And I'm like, well, what's the worst thing that'll happen? I'm on the side of the road and I break the clutch. Well, that's what happened. So I call him. I'm like, hey, you know how I said, and I'm literally laughing. I'm like, remember how I said what the worst thing that could happen? Yeah, I'm on the side of the road and I broke the clutch. So I need you to come pick me up.
Help
me. Go get my daughter. We'll get a tow truck and like everything will be fine. I would have been a wreck. Like I would have just been like so stressed out and like it's just your perspective. Like I feel like humor is so important.
100%.
And you look at, even as a wealth advisor, a financial planner, like what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like I'm reading a book right now and the title's something about like dying broke. It's like, it's not you should die broke, but it's like that. Yeah. And it's interesting to read as a financial advisor because most of us are all like, save your money, invest your money, but it's all about like, what is it for? Like, why would you leave this big inheritance if you're not like watching your kids, like spend the money along the way? And so it's just interesting how like your perspective as you age can change. But I think humor is so super important. And I try to that's what I try to have every single day is laugh as much as possible.
And laughing at yourself and not getting blowing off steam or whatever. All right, we're kind of winding down. I want to ask you another question, Nicole. Can you share with us somebody you've worked with that when you met them, they were in a disruption. They were feeling hopeless and unhealthy and unhappy and the arch. Where are they now after working with you? So give us a story. You don't need to share names, but somebody you worked with and kind of met them where they were and where are they today?
Yeah. So it's a woman, her son is the same age as my son. And so we met at this time that I was going through a divorce, but her husband had suddenly died in an accident. And it was just super traumatic. And there was life insurance money and all of her friends were like, just quit your job, like just be done, like go see Nicole and she'll, take care of everything. And she's like, but I'm young. She's like, I don't want to be done. She's like, there's more to like this. That's great that I have this money, but there's like more to life. And so she did take a year and traveled. She's not from Minnesota. So she spent some time with her family, with her son, like really figuring things out. Her mom died. Her dad then had some health issues. So it was lots of like just really deep, horrible experiences, rough things for her to go through emotionally. And she then started a business. And I will always remember we had a lunch and I helped her like come up with her business name, which is not one of my strong skills at all, but just helping her, many days I feel like a therapist, more or less, just like bouncing ideas off her. She started this business. She then sold that business probably 5 well, 5 years ago now. She sold that business and now she's doing something totally different. She's married, she has a second child. And it's
Wow.
just like, it's so neat to like
Beautiful.
watch that transformation
Yeah.
from watching someone and going through difficult things to seeing them, become that beautiful butterfly.
I love it. And I think you are a therapist. I am people that we're here to help people, whether we're guiding them in confidence, in financial literacy. And I think there are so many women that need that. I mean, men maybe too as well, but women that need financial support and to understand their bill. I meet women all the time. They're like, if anything happens to my husband, I'm just going to lose it because I have no idea. And I'm like, learn now. Don't wait for if anything happens to your husband. I just think it's such important work you do. And I also know when people are financially insecure, it can make them physically sick. It can make them stressed out and just clinging to anything. And because money, I always say, do you spend too much? Do you save enough? Do you give enough? Like we need to know, not be afraid of money, not be afraid to talk about it like other
Right.
things. So you do
Right.
such a great job with that. So I know my listeners are going to want to get to know you more, Nicole. I'm going to want to connect with you. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on all the social media channels, but otherwise it's prosperwell.com is the investment side of things. Otherwise, everything else is also at thelivitlist.com.
Okay. So Prosper Well or Live It List. So, well, thank you for being with us, Nicole. To our audience, we just say thank you for listening. If you have questions, comments, feel free to put them anywhere, and myself or Nicole or both of us will get back to you. Thank you for being my guest today. I appreciate you, and thank you for listening. Take care.